Okay, we continue our notes on the literature review on how, why, and when. So we continue with step 2, evaluate and select source. So for each publications, you have to ask yourself, what questions or problems is the author addressing? What are the key concepts and how are they defined? So before you start reading your articles, try questions these. What questions or problem is the author addressing? Is it suitable for your problems? What are the key concepts and how are they defined? What are the key theories, models, and methods? Does the research use established frameworks or take an innovative approach? What are the results and conclusions of the study? How does the publication relate to other literature in the field? Does it confirm, add to, or challenge established knowledge? This is part of the question that are important to your work. Does this publication relate to other literature in the field, in your field, or in your scope? Does it confirm, add to, or challenge established knowledge? How does the publication contribute to your understanding of the topic? What are its key insights and arguments? So look into it. What is the key insight, arguments? How does this publication contribute to your understanding of your scopes? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the research? These are mainly important questions for your work. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the research? Because this is the main gist for you to review their work. Make sure the sources you use are credible and make sure you read any landmark studies and major theories in your field of research. That's the reason, this is the reason why I asked you to go to Scopus, because most of the journals listed in this database are acceptable, credible. So you can use it without any questions regarding their quality. So we proceed with the step 3, identify themes, database, and gaps. To begin organizing your literature reviews, argument, and structure, you need to understand the connections and relationship between the source you have read. Based on your reading and notes, you can look for trends and patterns in theory, method, or results. Do certain approach become popular over time? Themes. What questions or concepts recur across the literature? So you have to look into this. The we given you a scope. Then you look into these articles that you choose, the trends and the pattern of this. Is there any popular technique, popular approach regarding the scope? So what kind of question or concept across the literature? They must be saying something similar, claiming something similar. Debates, conflicts, and contradiction. Where do sources disagree? So let's say you have 5 articles. See what's the conflicts or debates or contradiction between these 5. Pivotal publications. Are there any influential theories or studies that change the directions of the field? So look back into your articles. Is there any directional changes? Yeah? Any new things that change the flow? Gaps. What is missing from the literature? Are there weaknesses that need to be addressed? So you look into these 5 or 7 articles, see the weakness of their work. What is missing that you might can solve or add later on. So step 4, outline your literature reviews structures. Chronological. The simplest approach is to trace the development of the topic over time. However, if you choose this strategy, be careful to avoid simply listing and summarizing source in order. So that's the reason I mentioned to you, support your review with a diagram, because with this diagram, you can see the flow of your literature. Try to analyze patterns, turning points, and key debates that have shaped the directions of the field. Give your interpretation of how and why certain development occurred. So you have to analyze with your own knowledge the directions of this scope. Give your own interpretation of how and why certain developments occurred, why people use this certain to proceed with their development, to proceed with their research. Thematic. If you have found some recurring central themes, you can organize your literature review into subsections that address different aspects of the topics. This is why I say categorize it. When you read your articles, categorize your scope. Yeah? So give them sections and subsections so that you can see the aspect of the topic. Choose different aspect. Choose different approach that they use. For example, if you are reviewing literature about inequalities in migrant health outcomes, key themes may include healthcare policy, language barriers, culture attitudes, legal status, and economic access. So you read that. Be not lazy. Try to understand that. So write down the themes. Write down what is the problems. Categorize them. Methodological. If you draw your sources from different disciplines or fields that use a variety of research methods, you might want to compare the results and conclusions that emerge from different approach. Again, you can also divide subsections your articles using the methods. There are multi methods available. You have options. So this paper choose different methods. So you can review on these different methods. So for example, look at what results have emerged in qualitative versus quantitative research. So if you're talking about research, go into who's doing qualitative, who's doing quantitative, then you separate into these two and discuss, review them. Discuss how the topic has been approached by empirical versus theoretical scholarships. So you also can see the empirical and theoretical. Divide the literature into sociological, historical, and cultural source. So for you, if you want to divide the journals into research work and applications work, you can do that. But then you review according your diagram, your subsections. Theoretical. A literature review is often the foundations for a theoretical framework. You can use it to discuss various theories, models, and definitions of key concepts. You might argue for the levels of specific theoretical approach or combine various theoretical concepts to create a framework for your research. You also can define, categorize the articles according to theoretical framework. But I'm not really expecting you too much on the theoretical, but maybe you can do that. Yeah? So there's various theories, model, and definitions of key concept for your scope. So you can look into this theoretical background and argue this approach. If this person uses theoretical, uh, why you agree, why you not agree, or in which subject or in which application is suitable. So you discuss with them. Like let's say you're talking about applications. This person application rely on the web. This person not rely on the internet. This person rely on the internet. So argue that. So if you see the augmented reality applications, some of them rely on the internet. Some of them do not. They have their own point. Without the internet, so people can use anywhere. They did not rely on the network. But then the content must be small because the spec of the handphone is small. But if you want to make a bigger size of applications, you have to rely on the internet network. But of course, the network is not stable, especially in Malaysia. So people will feel, come on lah, tak boleh ni nak guna. So people will say like that. Okay. So this you argue Yeah, but still, okay, then you can also compare web-based and application-based, mobile-based. So some people prefer the web-based because the system can become bigger size. But of course, people do not like it because they have to bring their laptop anywhere. Some people like mobile-based because easy for them to use. You can bring anywhere because mobile phone is or tablet is small. But then again, the size cannot be as bigger as laptop web-based. So you discuss this according to these subsections. Step 5, write your literature review. So when you want to write, start with the introductions. The introduction should clearly establish the focus and purpose of the literature review. So you have to explain the purpose of your literature review. You have to explain the objective of this literature review. Then come to body. Depending on the length of your literature review, you might want to divide the body into subsections. You can use a subheading for each theme, time period, or methodology approach. So you can divide this body into subsection either according to theme, time period, methodological approach, whatever that you think you can separate into subsections. As you write, you can follow these tips, summarize and synthesize, give an overview of the main points of each source, and combine them into coherent whole. Analyze and interpret. Do not just paraphrase other researchers. Add your own interpretations where possible, discussing the significance of findings in relation to the literature as a whole. Critical evaluate. Mention the strength and weakness of your source. Write in well-structured paragraph, use transition words and topic sentences to draw connections, comparison, and contrast. So when you write literature review, make sure first you summarize first, you intro the journals first or the applications, you synthesize, give them overview. Then you analyze, interpret using your own judgment, using your own knowledge, then critically evaluate them. Again, with your own knowledge and support with other journals. So even we said 7 journals, you might need some other journals to support your critical evaluations. You already analyze, interpret, you already critical evaluations, but you need to support these using other journals. And of course, write in well-structured paragraph, use transition words. However, in the meantime, basically, that is the transitions words. So again, the last is conclusions. In the conclusion, you should summarize the key findings you have taken from the literature and emphasize their significance. So at the end, you you conclude, you summarize everything and emphasize their significance and emphasize your own judgment. So we have a traditional LR, we have standard literature review, yeah? Systematic literature review, which we call as SLR. Okay, so systematic literature review, I think it's not advisable for undergraduate because you need a lot of journals that you need to read. So basic traditional LR is a little bit simpler for undergraduate. It, it have to be introductions and of course background, yeah, and then you review. This is what I said, categorize, right? And then summary as previous slide. Okay, so introductions, you introduce the main purpose and the background of your titles, the story of the title, just a brief, not the whole complete articles. Then you start review. So if you review it, then support with this diagram. It's a simple diagram. Yeah. Start with the general, the whole general scope, general title. Then you categorize either 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Oops, where's the second? And then subcategory, right? Then at the end, you summary or conclusions of what you have reviewed. And this support with a table, whereby the table author's name, journal's name, title, article, volume number, year, and your own brief comments. So how to present? When you present LR, make it as like you gossiping these people, as though that you know these people. So let's say you're talking about virtual buttons limitation. You want to review these virtual buttons in terms of limitation. So how you present? Sung Lei Kim et al. Stated in their paper, they tested the virtual button in their mobile augmented reality game. The reflected light on the image target caused error in operating virtual button. He made a test using a player and team to identify the virtual button error. According to them, each of the virtual button has its own sensitivity level, which can be defined before the runtime of application. They tested the virtual buttons in their project of using instruments and continued their work on target detections in order to increase the level of successful detections. In the meanwhile, Siddhant Patel et al. 2016 stated that the sensitivity of the virtual button has to be increased, which leads to the output becoming more responsive to shadows. They stated that the camera in question should be highly sensitive to recognize the inputs of the shadows that fall on the virtual button. This because for the virtual button, camera will recognize the shadow of the hand and display the properties of the particular objects. According to He Jenkins et al., published in 2015, claim use hierarchical virtual button which place on the image target for more precise and faster interaction with augmented object. However, they concluded that it was difficult to apply bare hand tracking based interactions in a mobile device due to computational resource. They also said as the number of virtual buttons increase, the interaction is not feasible because it takes a long time to process the button occlusions, even handling. He suggested for dynamical hierarchical virtual buttons arrangements, the plan for the future work, they will improve the fingertips button detection algorithm and developing the natural movement of the second layer buttons. So this is the way you present. You mention the name, yeah, and the year as though that you know them, as though you're gossiping about them, right? So you can see that Sung Laki Im et al. 2014 stated in their paper. That's the basic word that you, or basic sentence that usually we use in a LR presentations. Siddhant Patel et al. Stated that the sensitivity of the virtual button has to be increased, which leads to the output becoming more responsive to shadows. So keep mentioning the names without like officials calling names. Like you know them. Like I know Siddhant Patel. Who is Siddhant Patel? But I didn't know him. But still I know because I read his articles. I know what he's doing. Yeah. Same thing with here. According to Heijin Kim et al., 2015, claim use hierarchical virtual buttons which place on the image target for more precise and fast interaction with augmented object. So I would like to see this when you present because the presentation should be you present your document, your LR, not to introduce the scope or your title. Okay, thank you very much indeed. If you have any questions, please ask in the group.